So we've gotten a half an hour through the show. No sign of Tony Considine, but sure, hopefully he'll show up eventually. Should we get into talking a little bit about the big game of the weekend in hurling, which is Clare against Waterford?
I'd say we kind of have to, don't we? Again, it is behind GA Go, obviously, but it's there's several different strands to it. It's yet another chapter to the Brian Lohan versus Davy Fitzgerald battle, which you'd have to say Brian Lohan has definitely had the strong arm of that battle in recent years. I think does he have two championship victories over him when he was Wexford manager. Even when Davy played Clare in the 17 quarter final, I think it was Donald Maloney and Jerry O'Connor were over Clare. Clare won that game as well. So Davy probably has not a great record against his native county. But it's definitely an interesting strand to the game before we even talk about the game. Just the fact that there's been so much of a hoo-ha between the two of them in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game you can't help but be pumped for because, and like, remember a couple of years ago, there was the man on the sideline for Clare, throwing in a few digs at Davy, and he was quite upset by that. And, that man is going to be, he's still involved in the backroom team of Clare. I saw him at the match there recently against Tipperary. Is there going to be a bit of jawing going on as well? And like, people can say it's unsavoury and all that, but let's call a spade a spade. There's a reason scandalous stuff is always in the front of newspapers. It's because we're all prurient creatures. We all want to see this sort of stuff. We want a bit of scandal. And we know that a little bit of that could happen this weekend. Let's, call a spade.
Yeah. Well, what would you talk about most after a match, like that you played in, and that you're involved in on the sideline? Most of what ends up being talked about is, X, Y, or Z said this to me, and I said this to him, and two boys were chawing over and back, and it's like it's all those like that is a big part of hurling, the GA. It's a big part of sport as well. So there's part of us absolutely crave that. And even like you've been the same, I'm sure, during matches, like someone could say something to you and you could say anything back to them. Do you know what I mean? Not going below the belt or anything like that. But like if someone says something to you, just react and you say something back. And it all kind of stays between the confines of the pitch or the sideline or whatever. But it's fascinating to see what can happen and what can be said and what can go on. And unless you're down there, you're not really privy to it. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of barbs thrown over and back on Saturday night. And listen, that probably adds to the occasion a bit more again.
So do you remember the sort of maverick era of Waterford, which was, everything that included Justin McCarthy and maybe Gerald McCarthy? Like, that used to be a gunslinging Waterford team that got goals. They were hungry for goals. And then I think, I remember doing an article before, but I don't have the stats here in front of me. But there was like a period of 10 years there where Waterford were scoring like 19 or 20 points per game in the championship. It was over a long period of time. I had to dig out the article. But this current Waterford team, in their 2 games so far in the championship, have scored 19 points against Limerick and 18 points against Cork.
Yeah.
They've lost their last 5 Munster championship games. They haven't scored a goal this year in the championship. Can they change that this weekend? Because surely they have to. And like, you look at the players they have. Stephen Bennett, Desi Hutchinson, Ozzie Gleeson. There's a couple of more you could throw into the mix as well. And I'm wondering why Patrick Curran has gone so far down the pecking order. Look at how good he looked a year ago. Whereas now he's not being used. And this might point somewhat to how Davy Fitz picks his team. But like, he's not really in the mix again. And you're like, he's so talented. Like, and maybe he's not going well in training, but it's just surprising.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like, geez, Shane, you go down through 8 to 9 really good forwards that would really hurt you and have hurt teams in the last couple of years. Waterford are obviously in an All-Ireland final in 20. They were in a semi-final in 21. Won the league last year. Like, it's, I'm kind of confused by how they're playing completely differently than they were then. I thought it would be Carl plays a bit of a running game as well, something similar to what Davy would do. But Waterford have kind of fallen back. Well behind the ball now at this stage. They're kind of sitting really, really deep. As you say, they're not giving themselves a chance really to put up a 223 or a 224. You're going to hope and they're potentially going to cut loose at the weekend. That'll mean the shackles will have to come off somewhat defensively and systematically if that is the case. But and that's probably going to mean changes of personnel as well. Like, I don't know what the story is with Austin Gleeson and why he hasn't started and finished the game this year, but he has to be in from the start. He just has to be. Like this is it for them. They've gotten a lifeline that probably looked unlikely. With the draw with Cork and Tip, kind of mean it's a fair chance if Waterford win their 2 games, they go through. So the cagey stuff has to kind of go out the window here, and they need to throw the kitchen sink at it. And you have to remember as well, like against Limerick, there was a lot of brilliant stuff against Limerick. They were trying to win a certain type of game, but they nearly did, and it was just a lack of accuracy in front of the post that caught them in the wind-up. But I'd be expecting changes. I would be expecting Patrick Curran to be in from the start. I'd be expecting Ozzie Gleeson to be in from the start.
Patrick Fitzgerald.
Yeah,
they can't all start.
Yeah, no, I'd probably be putting Patrick Fitzgerald in as well, particularly just about how influential he's been off the bench. And he just looks, I don't know, I was surprised. I didn't think he'd look ready-made, but he kind of does. And this idea of holding a lad back like you just have to throw everything you have at it right now. And hopefully to be able to get Stephen Bennett back into a bit of form as well. But if they do have a right good cut, they are a dangerous animal.
Like we were talking about the amount of scores that Stephen Bennett had got from play in the league, and I don't think he'd scored from play in the league, had he?
No.
And so far in the championship now, he's scored 3 points from play. How can he go from hurler of the year contender a couple of years ago to form like this? Is it him personally, or is it the team setup? Because sometimes you give players a bit of an out by saying it's the setup, and he was very unlucky last day. He soloed through. He smashed a shot into the top corner, or tried to. It hit off Damon Callahan's helmet, and it goes back out. Like a few times, he did decide, I'm going to go at this Cork team, and he was having success. It just didn't end up in the back of the net.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like if you remember Bennett's unbelievable score against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final 20, where he picked the ball up around the 45. Like, I don't know. To me, there's a lad that is not restricted or chained by anything that's going on. They've been given a fair bit of freedom. And I just wonder at the moment, are they being a bit restricted? And I'm just hoping the shackles come off this weekend, because if they do, they could cut loose and put up a huge tally. But I don't know, as well as that, like if you're used to playing a system now and playing a certain type of way, is it a lot more difficult to cut loose then when you've gotten programmed or gotten used to playing a certain type of way? But you can't get away from the fact that Waterford have only won one of their 14 round robin games, and that was last year in the first round against Tip. So to say that they could put 2 wins back to back, maybe that's a bit of a departure to say that, given all known form that we have in front of us.
John Noonan says, Shane, is there any chance you could give a shout out to the local postman, Riffy Prout? I'm wondering, am I being set up here? Is that really a name? But he's a proud Limerick hurling man that's driving around the roads of Cashel listening now. Sound, great show. Thanks very much. Adrian McGrath also says, the simple issue is that Clare performed in Munster Championship, including versus Tip this year. The question is, can Waterford, without Kylie and De Burka, play their system at that standard? Detox 101, I think Bennett should move further out, needs to be on more ball, solo in and bury it. He tried it a few times lately, but seems to be caught for whether to go for a goal or point. Desi Hutchinson has scored 4 points in 2 championship games. Bennett has just 3 from play. They're not getting too much out of Ozzie. Obviously, not starting him is a huge factor with that. I mean, it just feels like they have all these weapons, and they just, like there's a composer with the orchestra, and they're not getting a tune out of it.
Yeah, there are an awful lot of weapons there. There's no point in saying any different. I wouldn't be playing Caleb Lyons in centre back as well. I'd be putting him out right wing and let him maraud forward. Don't tie him down to a role.
But you would have said that Jack Fagan isn't as used to, let's say, the sweeping role, for example.
No, he's probably not. I to be honest with you, if they're going to try and have a good kind of crack at the weekend, I wouldn't be playing a sweeper for the large majority of the game. I'd be hoping that Irda Daly's fit to come back in as well. I'd probably bring Cormac Daly's energy in as well. But I don't know, Shane. Like, depends whether I'll put it this way: are they going to try and save this season, or are they going to by playing a bit off the cuff the way we know Waterford have traditionally played well down through the year? Are they going to stay to the system for next year or for the year? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of. Do we stay doing what we've been doing for the long term, or do we try and have a cut and save the season and do something different in this game that could save our season if we win?
Do Waterford just have one too many bogeys on the field? They have all the talent that we've named, but there's maybe just 1 or 2 players, and obviously we're not going to be cruel enough to kind of call them out or whatever, but they do have a couple of players that probably aren't quite at the same standard of the opposition or the standard of the players that have dropped out.
I think even if you go back to the great Waterford side, if you're hand on heart, a lot of those players would have said that they had Ken McGrath and Tony Brown and Milan and Shanahan and Owen Kelly and Paul Flynn, etc. But they probably were carrying a few players, maybe particularly in defence or that. It kind of looks a bit similar now, and those players maybe can get away within a system. Maybe it won't be as exposed as badly, maybe, but maybe you're suffering at the other end of the pitch as a result of that. Then maybe you're not putting up the sort of tally. Maybe you're being restricted a bit more at the other end of the pitch. I just hope they take a right good cut, because if they're standing back and they let Clare have a cut at them, Clare will take a right cut at them, and they'll win by 7 or 8 pulling up.
And do you think we're going to see a handshake between Davy and Lohan?
I think there was a handshake the last time, was there? I think
doesn't mean that they'll do it this time.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, it doesn't mean that they'll do it this time. I suppose, listen, a lot of that at the end of a game would depend on what's happened for the previous 75 minutes, what's been said, what hasn't been said, were there controversial incidents. You know, realistically, it's just, I just think it's gas within a game. If you look at the Waterford Limerick game, like that all bubbled over because of an incident right in front of the Waterford dugout. That's when things go awry, really, isn't it? Like, if that happens at the other end of the pitch, it's probably not nearly as bad. But there's a tendency that things just seem to happen close to the dugouts, close to the opposition manager, close to where there's hangers on, and that's when it gets really messy. Is it messy another word for fun? Yes, it probably is.
We're looking for large portions of messy this weekend. So we know that Waterford are gone if they lose this game. But even more interesting is if Waterford lose this game, that's Clare very much in the mix. If Cork beat Clare, then what will happen is Limerick are 1 defeat away from being out of the championship in either of their last 2 games. Lose either and they're gone if those 2 results happen. Isn't that tasty enough? Like, because I'm not saying we want to see Limerick gone or whatever. Well, we kind of do, because we want to feel like everyone has a chance to win the All-Ireland then. Like, if Limerick get out, you feel like, okay, they're starting to build up form now and they're probably going to win the All-Ireland again. But if you just wanted to just be completely up in the air, because who on earth would win the All-Ireland if Limerick got knocked out? It would be so exciting from that point of view, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it would. And there's a kind of a thought that if Limerick can survive in Munster, they're heavy favourites to win the All-Ireland. They are. Even third. They'll take third. They just want to qualify at this stage. But it's so up in the air at the moment. And we don't know how they're going to adapt to Sean Finn's loss. We're not 100% sure about Keane Inch. And there's a lot of, form kind of question marks. So, yeah, no, if certain teams could beat other teams, it's going to make it... It's already, like, unbelievably interesting. But if results work that way, and we'll say Limerick have to... Limerick are going to have to get to 5 points if that happens. Do you know what I mean? So it gets very, very interesting. Tipperary have 3 at the moment and are looking pretty good, but could easily end up out. Very, very easily end up out. This is all the looks of a 2019 Leinster Championship, realistically, doesn't it? Where Galway were beating All-Ireland finalists the year before, All-Ireland winners the year before, and they go out and score difference in a chaotic final day. It has all the look of that this year.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, back to Waterford, with Cork Daly, like, who looked so impressive last year, will he get a bit more game time? Maybe he's carrying something. Paul Newtape says the only thing we're guaranteed is that Waterford will be better against Clare this time than they were last year. And obviously, they were hammered in that game. It's 50-50, I'd say, this time. It would be more exciting if Waterford win. Aidan McGrath says Austin Gleeson has to play 6. If Waterford play off the cuff, it would suggest that the manager is no longer in charge. Fagan should never have gone back. They have no ball winner up front like him. Rather, Curran ran over him every day of the week. Curran over him every day of the week. I'm not sure who you're referring to there, One Stop Auto. The Waterford hurling team, says Richard Hogan, their performances are symptomatic of everything going on in Waterford GA at the moment. Poor form from team in all codes, no home games, etc.
Just on that point, Shane, so like we've said it on the show previously, but Waterford have lost all 15 championship games at minor, 20, senior across both codes. They don't have a ground to play in at the moment. Like, things are not hectic at the moment, and they need the senior team, the flag bearing team, to put in some sort of performance and probably save a bit of face, I would say, as well.
Okay, and One Stop Auto was saying he'd prefer to have Curran over Mikey Kiley.
Yeah, but Mikey Kiley at Fitzgibbon Cup level is a destroyer. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if it's because he's been playing maybe more of a lone man up there now. But at Fitzgibbon Cup level, he's a destroyer and he's a paw on him. But I don't know. you see him if it's given cup level playing with confidence. And then you wonder with some of them, are they playing with confidence now? Are they playing slightly restricted? But I have to say, like that defeat, that Clare hammering against Waterford last year in Cusack Park, surely that is fairly fresh in the Waterford players' minds as well. That has to be, like, there's probably been a few low points in recent years, but that has to be the lowest point of all of their careers in recent times. Going from being an All-Ireland final, semi-final, against Limerick the previous years, being league champions, to, leaving with your tail between your legs. I think it was 14 points in Cusack Park. It could have been 40 points. Surely that's going to be fresh in their minds, and there'd be a bit of a reaction based on that alone.
Yeah, I ended down tools last year. Let's call it spade. So Davy Fitz said about the situation at the moment. Cork lost the first 2 games last year and qualified. You don't know. We're certainly just taking the next game as it is. So we're looking forward to having a go. We lost 2, and we always knew playing Limerick in the first round. Some people suggested to me that we should have just held for the Cork game, and that was never going to be the case. You want to go out and be competitive in every game, and we did. We put a lot of effort into the first 2 games. I'm looking at it straight out as follows. We've Clare next. We'll give it 110% in that. To be fair, they were very close to Limerick, and the chance was there, and they left it behind them, the red card and everything. They didn't manage the situation. We'll move on anyway. We'll both give our predictions, actually. I'm going to go for Clare to win this game.
Yeah, Clare would win by 5-6 in the wind-up, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so Owen Downey, he's set to miss the under-20 final. We also reckon that Adam Hogan, if he's going to play in either of these senior matches, he's also going to miss the under-20 final. It's Cork against Clare. Again, ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's mad. Like even the ruling is kind of confusing. So if he plays on Saturday night against Waterford, I assume that's him out of Monday's final. If he doesn't play Saturday and he plays Monday's final, can he go and play against Cork? No, that's a couple of weekends. That's a couple of weekends away. It's not the weekend after, is it? I don't think it is. It's 2 weekends there. Yeah, the whole thing is very confusing. I can't imagine from a manager's point of view how difficult it is to. I presume a decision is made with senior management quite quickly, and they say, "Listen, we're pulling this guy, and you're just not going to have him, and it's not an 11th hour kind of thing." But just on Clare, we'll chat about it a bit more. But like their minors and 20s are flying at the moment as well, and it looks like, on the flip side of Waterford, it looks like things are fairly rosy in Clare now, whereas a couple of years ago, you were probably pushing the panic button.
Yeah. Okay, so last year...
Mark Meehan said last year Waterford had the best panel last year. Yeah, would stand over that 100%.
And we're naming players and saying, this lad's class, and, why is nothing happening here? Why are they not scoring? They have all these brilliant forwards. So I do think that they've got a couple of players in certain positions that are, you can see that there's a bit of shallowness when it comes to the panel. So fair enough, he does have a point there, Mark. But there's some talent there at the same time in other positions.
Yeah, serious talent. Yeah, I know they obviously lost, would say, Pádraig Mahoney. He was maybe hoping that they might get Stephen O'Keefe back this year again, which didn't obviously happen. But on paper, if you're talking about talent, Waterford have a hell of a lot of it, and I'd stand over that last year, no problem, that they had the best panel in the country, no problem standing over that, even though it obviously didn't come to fruition.
Okay.